This is a summary of To Kill a Mockingbird, focusing on chapters 1 to 10, created to help students succeed in their exams. If you found this helpful, please subscribe, like the video, and hit the notification bell for more chapter summaries. Chapter 1. This chapter delves deeply into the mysterious aura surrounding the Radley house and its inhabitants, particularly Boo Radley, as seen through the curious and imaginative eyes of Scout, Jem, and Dill. The Radleys, a reclusive family in the otherwise close-knit neighborhood of Maycomb, are a source of endless fascination and speculation. The house itself, described as old and droopy, seems almost alive with its eerie presence, further stoking the children's fear and curiosity. Boo Radley, the most enigmatic member of the family, is the subject of countless rumors and urban legends. Stories of his supposed nocturnal habits, frightening appearance, and alleged violent tendencies have made him a figure of terror and intrigue in the children's minds. The chapter begins with the neighborhood reacting to the death of Mr. Radley, Boo's father, who was widely regarded as a harsh and unkind man. Calpurnia, usually reserved in her opinions about white families, openly calls him the meanest man God ever blew breath into, a rare and striking comment. The children, along with the rest of the neighborhood, initially believed that Mr. Radley's death might bring a change, perhaps even coax Boo out of hiding. However, this hope is quickly dashed when Nathan Radley, Boo's elder brother, returns from Pensacola to take his father's place. Nathan, much like his father, keeps the Radley household shrouded in mystery and isolation, continuing the tradition of estrangement from the community. Although Nathan occasionally acknowledges the children with a greeting, his interactions are minimal, and he remains a distant figure. Dill, Scout, and Jem spend their summer consumed by curiosity about the Radleys, particularly Boo. Dill, new to Maycomb and captivated by the town's stories, becomes the most obsessed with uncovering the truth about Boo. He pesters Jem and Scout with questions and speculations, urging them to think about what Boo might be doing inside the house. Dill's fascination grows with every whispered tale, especially the one from Miss Stephanie Crawford, who claims to have seen Boo staring at her through a window at night, his face pale and ghostly. Jem adds to the mystique by describing Boo as a monstrous figure, 6.5 feet tall, dining on raw animals, with blood-stained hands, a scarred face, and drooling constantly. This gruesome image, though clearly a product of childhood imagination and fear, serves to heighten Dill's determination to see Boo. Dill eventually proposes that they try to lure Boo out of the house. While Jem is initially resistant, Dill's persistent teasing and daring remarks about the bravery, or lack thereof, of Maycomb's residents finally wear him down. Dill bets Jem a copy of the Gray Ghost against 2 Tom Swift that he won't get any farther than the Radley Gate. Jem, unable to resist a challenge to his courage, reluctantly accepts but spends 3 days deliberating how to proceed. His hesitance reveals his internal conflict, a mix of fear, pride, and a sense of responsibility for Scout, his younger sister, who looks up to him. After much debate, Dill modifies the dare, suggesting that Jem only needs to touch the Radley house rather than attempt to get Boo to come out. This compromise finally convinces Jem. Determined to prove his bravery, Jem carefully studies the house and yard before suddenly darting forward, slapping the side of the house, and sprinting back to the safety of their porch. Scout and Dill follow him in a rush, their hearts pounding with adrenaline and fear. Once they are safely back on their porch, the children pause to catch their breath and glance back at the Radley house. At first, everything appears unchanged, but then they notice a subtle, almost imperceptible movement. A shutter inside the house flickers briefly, as though someone is watching them. This tiny moment leaves the children both thrilled and terrified, their imaginations running wild about what Boo might have seen or thought. This chapter emphasizes the children's adventurous and imaginative nature, their growing awareness of fear and courage, and their fascination with the unknown. Boo Radley, though never seen or heard, looms large as a symbol of mystery and the power of rumor in a small-town community. The children's daring act and its eerie aftermath set the stage for further exploration of their relationship with the Radley house and the enigmatic figure inside. Chapter 2. Dill left for Meridian in early September, leaving Scout feeling lonely until she realized she would soon start school. She eagerly anticipated joining the children she had observed from her treehouse, dreaming of being part of their games and adventures. On her first day, Jem reluctantly agreed to take her to school, but made it clear she was to stay out of his way. Excitement quickly turned to disillusionment for Scout. Her teacher, Miss Caroline Fisher, a young and fashionable newcomer, struggled to connect with the rural children of Macomb. She read them a whimsical story about talking cats, but the practical, work-hardened first graders were unimpressed. Miss Caroline's attempts to teach were met with further challenges when she discovered Scout could already read. Instead of being pleased, she scolded Scout, insisting Atticus stop teaching her, claiming it was better to start fresh. Confused and hurt, Scout couldn't understand why her ability to read was treated as a problem. Scout's troubles didn't end there. During a writing exercise, Miss Caroline reprimanded her again, saying writing wasn't taught until 3rd grade. Scout reflected on how she had learned to write from Calpurnia, who had given her strict and practical lessons on rainy days. Later, Miss Caroline noticed that one student, Walter Cunningham, had no lunch. When she offered him a quarter to buy food, he refused, leaving her confused. Scout explained that Walter was a Cunningham, a family known for their pride and self-reliance. They never accepted anything they couldn't repay. Scout's well-meaning explanation only frustrated Miss Caroline, who didn't understand the nuances of Macomb's social fabric. By the end of the day, Scout's excitement about school had turned into disappointment. She couldn't fathom how a place she had dreamed of joining could feel so alien. Jem tried to comfort her, explaining that Miss Caroline was using a new teaching method. Still, Scout felt out of place, longing for the comfort and understanding of home. Chapter 3. In the schoolyard, Scout catches Walter Cunningham and begins to taunt him, but Jem intervenes, telling her to stop because she's bigger than Walter. They discuss Walter's family situation, and Jem invites him to come home with them for lunch. Walter, initially hesitant, agrees. As they walk to Jem's house, they talk about Boo Radley, and Walter reveals that he almost died after eating pecans from Boo's yard, which people claimed were poisoned. Once they reach Jem's home, Walter's family background becomes more apparent, but Jem still warmly invites him to dinner. During the meal, Walter pours syrup over his entire plate, including his vegetables and meat. Scout, shocked by his actions, criticizes him, prompting Calpurnia to take Scout aside. Calpurnia scolds her harshly, teaching her that it's wrong to judge others for their different ways, especially when they are guests. Scout is sent to the kitchen to finish her meal, frustrated and upset by Calpurnia's reprimand. Later at school, Miss Caroline, the teacher, is horrified when a cootie crawls out of Burris Yule's hair. The class reacts with amusement, but Miss Caroline, unfamiliar with such things, is clearly disturbed. Burris Yule, a member of a notorious local family, refuses to comply with Miss Caroline's instructions to wash his hair with soap and kerosene, instead mocking her. As the confrontation escalates, Burris makes a defiant exit, swearing at Miss Caroline. Little Chuck Little, a classmate, steps in to protect the teacher, warning Burris to leave before things get worse. Burris eventually exits, leaving Miss Caroline upset and shaken, while the rest of the class tries to comfort her. Chapter 4. Scout reflects on the drudgery of her first year of school, where she felt uninspired and underappreciated by the state's educational system, which seemed more focused on teaching group dynamics than anything practical. She contrasts her own educational experience with that of her father, Atticus, and her uncle, who were well-educated despite never attending school in the traditional sense. She also notes how Jem, who had a slightly different school experience, was naturally inclined toward books, unlike Scout, who had to rely on outside reading materials like Time magazine and whatever she could get her hands on at home. One afternoon, as Scout runs past the Radley house after school, she spots something shiny in the knothole of one of the live oak trees. Upon closer inspection, she finds 2 pieces of chewing gum wrapped in tinfoil. After examining them and confirming they seem safe, she eats them. When Jem returns home, he scolds her for touching the trees near the Radley house, warning her that it could be dangerous. Scout retorts that Jem had once touched the house, but Jem insists it was different. To avoid trouble with Calpurnia, Scout follows Jem's orders and gargles to remove the taste of the gum. As summer approaches, Scout and Jem eagerly await the arrival of Dill, who had been away with his mother. When Dill finally arrives in Maycomb, the children discuss the mysterious Radley house again. They discover a small box filled with 2 old pennies wrapped in tinfoil, which they find in the same knothole. Jem suggests that the pennies may have been hidden by someone, possibly a child, and decides they should keep them until they can find the owner. The children engage in various playful activities, including a game where Dill claims he can smell death, something he learned from an old woman. They also discuss the concept of hot steams, spirits that roam lonesome roads at night, sucking the breath of passers-by. While Dill seems to believe in them, Scout dismisses them as nonsense, and Jem reveals how to protect oneself from a hot steam by chanting a rhyme. One day, as they are playing, Jem pushes Scout in an old tire, sending her racing uncontrollably down the sidewalk toward the Radley house. The tire finally crashes, and Scout is left dazed, with her face now turned toward the Radley steps. Jem calls out for her to hurry, but Scout freezes, overcome by a strange sensation of fear and awe as she faces the Radley house. Chapter 5. Scout begins to notice the growing distance between herself and her older brother Jem, as well as their friend Dill. The 2 boys are becoming more independent, often going off on their own without including her. This leaves Scout feeling somewhat isolated and left out of their adventures. She expresses her feelings of loneliness, observing that Dill and Jem are developing a deeper bond while she struggles to fit into their evolving dynamic. In an effort to cope with her feelings, Scout finds solace in spending time with Miss Maudie Atkinson, a kind and independent neighbor who enjoys tending to her garden. Miss Maudie is a sharp contrast to the other women in the town and takes delight in discussing various topics, including her own personal views on religion and society. Through their conversations, Miss Maudie offers Scout a more progressive perspective on life in Maycomb, which Scout finds comforting. During one of their talks, Miss Maudie opens up about Boo Radley. She shares her belief that Boo is still alive and that the gossip surrounding him is mostly unfounded. Miss Maudie describes Boo as a victim of his father's harshness and the town's judgment, presenting him as a human being rather than the monster that the townspeople have made him out to be. Miss Maudie also takes the opportunity to criticize the Foot-Washing Baptists, a group in Maycomb that adheres to a very strict interpretation of religion. She mocks their disapproval of things like the enjoyment of life and Miss Maudie's love of her flowers. Her independent views provide a refreshing contrast to the narrow-mindedness of many in the town. Meanwhile, Jem and Dill's fascination with Boo Radley intensifies. The 2 boys come up with a plan to try to make Boo come outside and interact with them. They come up with the idea of sending Boo a note, encouraging him to come out of his house and join them for a conversation. The note is written in a playful and friendly manner, suggesting that Boo should come out for some ice cream if he wants to. They enlist Scout to help with their plan, although she's hesitant to get involved in such a risky endeavor. The plan involves sneaking up to the Radley house and trying to slip the note through the window. Jem and Dill want to make sure they don't get caught by Boo's brother Nathan Radley or any other adults, so they ask Scout to keep watch for any potential dangers. Though she feels uncomfortable about the situation, Scout agrees to be the lookout, even though she's unsure about the ethics of their actions. She remains hidden in the shrubbery while the boys attempt to get the note to Boo. The chapter explores the increasing complexity of Scout's relationships with her brother and their friend Dill as they grow older and begin to take on new challenges and adventures. It also highlights Scout's evolving understanding of the world around her, especially through her conversations with Miss Maudie, who provides both wisdom and a counterpoint to the prejudiced attitudes prevalent in Maycomb. The mystery of Boo Radley also deepens as the children continue their attempts to interact with him, setting the stage for future developments in the novel. In Chapter 6 of To Kill a Mockingbird, Jem, Scout, and Dill are spending the evening together in Maycomb, enjoying their last moments with Dill before he returns to Meridian. As the three friends sit by Miss Rachel's fishbowl, they watch the moon rise and make playful observations about the town. Dill, ever the trickster, suggests they go for a walk, though Scout is suspicious of his intentions. Dill's suggestion to visit the Radley house seems odd, but after some convincing from Jem, Scout reluctantly agrees to tag along. The children, full of curiosity and the desire to know more about the mysterious Boo Radley, sneak across the yard and carefully make their way to the Radley house. They attempt to avoid detection by crawling under a fence and moving silently through the dark, moonlit garden. Their aim is to peek inside the house and possibly catch a glimpse of Boo, whom they believe is hidden away within. The suspense builds as they approach the house. Jem leads the way, and Dill and Scout follow. Jem helps Dill climb up to a window, but Dill sees nothing but curtains and faint light, which leaves the children disappointed. However, the tension rises when Jem ventures further and attempts to look into another window. As he places his foot on the creaky step of the porch, the children hear a shadowy presence moving near them. Jem freezes, and the atmosphere becomes thick with dread. Dill and Scout, scared but unable to leave, are equally tense. Suddenly, the shadow of a man appears, seemingly walking along the porch toward Jem, causing him to freeze in fear. The shadow moves past Jem, and the children sense that they are not alone. When the shadow recedes, Jem, filled with terror, quickly leads the group back to safety, dashing through the collared patch and across the yard. The adventure takes a turn for the worse when a shotgun blast echoes through the night, adding a jolt of panic to their already frayed nerves. Mr. Nathan Radley has fired a warning shot at them. The children run for cover and escape to the schoolyard, where they briefly separate from Jem in their desperate flight. Jem struggles to escape from the fence, managing to free himself and reach the safety of a nearby oak tree. The children make their way back home as quickly as they can, but once they reach the front yard, they notice a group of neighbors gathered at the Radley gate. Mr. Nathan Radley stands with his shotgun, while Atticus, Miss Maudie, Miss Stephanie, and others discuss the situation. They explain that Mr. Radley shot at a Negro in his garden, though the shot missed. Mr. Radley seems to be on edge, convinced that anyone in his yard at night must have sinister intentions. The children are nervous, but their escape from the Radley house remains a secret for the time being. The scene shifts to an awkward moment when Jem is questioned about his missing pants. The neighbors, who have gathered after hearing the gunshot, see Jem in his shorts and are curious about why he's not wearing pants. Dill, in an attempt to cover for Jem, claims that they were playing strip poker by the fishbowl. The adults are confused, and Miss Rachel, alarmed by the suggestion of gambling, immediately becomes upset. The children's lie helps cover their tracks, but Atticus later scolds them for the foolishness of their actions, specifically condemning the game of poker. Despite the tension, Dill finds comfort in the fact that Atticus will likely smooth things over with Miss Rachel. As the night winds down, the children feel the weight of their actions. They realize that they had been reckless and, in many ways, lucky to escape without further consequences. Scout especially is haunted by the events, her mind still reeling from the fear of Boo Radley and the strange shadow they saw. The next morning, as they prepare for the day, Jem and Scout are anxious, knowing that they can't keep their secret forever. The thrill of their adventure is tempered by the realization that their curiosity about Boo Radley may have led them too far into dangerous territory. Despite their nerves, they find comfort in their usual routine, but the memory of that night lingers. In this chapter, Harper Lee delves into themes of childhood curiosity, fear of the unknown, and the tension between innocence and recklessness. The children's fascination with Boo Radley continues to grow, as does the mystery surrounding his reclusive existence. This chapter sets the stage for the coming revelations about Boo and the broader themes of prejudice, fear, and understanding that will unfold as the story progresses. The moment of fear at the Radley house serves as a powerful reminder that sometimes Our curiosity can lead us into situations that are beyond our understanding or control. The narrative also hints at the growing maturity of the children as they begin to comprehend the consequences of their actions, particularly in relation to the complex dynamics of their small town. Chapter 7. Jem remains withdrawn and moody for a week after the events surrounding their late-night visit to the Radley house. Scout, reflecting on her father Atticus's advice, tries to understand Jem's behavior by climbing into his skin and walking around in it, attempting to empathize with his feelings. She recognizes the trauma of what happened when Jem had gone back to retrieve his pants, and how he was left feeling shaken by what he found when he returned to the Radley fence. For Scout, the emotional distance between them feels significant, and she chooses to leave him alone, not wanting to add to his burden. School begins, and Scout finds the second grade even worse than the first. The dull and monotonous teaching methods frustrate her, as the curriculum still revolves around flashcards instead of encouraging students to read or write. Miss Caroline, Scout's teacher, seems to be having difficulty, and Scout notices that the same group of classmates from the previous year have flunked and are repeating the grade. However, she finds comfort in the fact that she and Jem now walk home together each afternoon at 3 o'clock, a daily routine that serves as a small consolation for the otherwise oppressive nature of school. One afternoon, while walking home, Jem suddenly speaks up. For the first time in days, he breaks his silence, telling Scout about something he had never shared before, the night when he had gone back for his breeches after running away from the Radley place. He describes how the pants had been tangled when he tried to escape, but when he returned for them, they had been neatly folded across the fence, almost as if someone had been expecting him. Jem is clearly disturbed by this, especially when he notices that the stitching had been done in a way that suggested it wasn't the work of a skilled seamstress, but rather something done hastily, almost as if someone had tried to mimic the act of sewing. This unsettling realization leads Jem to feel as though someone had been able to predict his actions, almost reading his mind. Scout tries to reassure him, but Jem remains disturbed by the mystery surrounding his discovery. Later, the two children pass by their secret tree, which has been a source of mystery ever since they began finding small gifts hidden in its knothole. On this occasion, they find a ball of gray twine. Scout urges Jem not to take it, suggesting that it might belong to someone else, perhaps a child who hides things in the tree. Jem, however, is less hesitant and insists that they leave it for a few days before taking it. When they return and the twine is still there, Jem finally takes it, and the two of them agree to consider everything they find in the knothole as their property. The second grade continues to be a grim experience for Scout, but Jem reassures her that school will improve as she gets older, just as it did for him. By the time Jem reaches the 6th grade, he finds that school is more enjoyable, although his interests sometimes take on quirky, odd forms. For example, he goes through what Scout calls an Egyptian period, in which he pretends to walk in the manner of ancient Egyptians. His fascination with Egypt seems absurd to Scout, but Jem is serious about it, arguing that Egyptians accomplished much, including the invention of toilet paper and the process of embalming, which he believes revolutionized modern life. Atticus, ever the voice of reason, tells Scout to focus on the facts and leave out the adjectives. The change of seasons is barely noticeable in Alabama. The mild autumn often blends into the following spring without a clear distinction. One day in October, Jem and Scout encounter the knothole again and discover something new: 2 small silk carvings. One is a boy, and the other is a girl, dressed in crude, handmade clothing. At first, Scout is frightened and imagines some supernatural connection to the carvings, but Jem assures her that they are just carvings, and he is impressed by their quality. The carvings resemble Scout and Jem, with the boy figure mirroring Jem's appearance, and the girl figure resembling Scout, complete with bangs. Scout wonders who could have made them, and Jem speculates that it might be someone nearby, like Mr. Avery, but neither is convinced. The carvings make them feel as though someone is watching them, and they wonder if the mysterious person knows them in some way. The pair continues to find more gifts in the knothole, including a pack of chewing gum and a tarnished medal that turns out to be an old spelling contest prize from the county schools. However, it is a pocket watch, tarnished and no longer working, that becomes their most prized find. Jem even wonders if the watch is made of white gold, but Atticus advises him that it's likely worth only a few dollars if it were new. Nevertheless, Jem becomes increasingly attached to it and even expresses an interest in fixing it. The watch becomes a symbol of their growing curiosity about the mysterious person who is leaving them gifts. Jem becomes frustrated as the gifts in the knothole accumulate, and he wonders if they should write a letter to the person leaving them the items. Scout encourages him, and they compose a polite note of thanks. However, when they return to the tree the following day, they discover that the knothole has been filled with cement. Jem is devastated, and although he tries to hide his feelings, his disappointment is evident. He watches Mr. Nathan Radley, who fills the hole with cement, and asks him why he did it. Mr. Radley explains that the tree was dying, and Jem is left disillusioned, realizing that the tree was healthy, contrary to what Mr. Radley had said. The mystery of the gifts remains unresolved, but it marks a pivotal moment for Jem, who feels that his connection to the Radleys and to the tree has been severed. That night, Jem is visibly upset, and as he stands on the porch in deep thought, Scout notices that he has been crying. It is a significant moment for Jem, who has been struggling to make sense of the mysterious events, and it marks a shift in his understanding of the world around him. The knothole and the gifts it contained had been a symbol of a kind of connection with the unknown, but with the cement now blocking it, that connection is no longer possible. Jem's emotional reaction reveals his growing awareness of the complexities and disappointments that come with life in Maycomb. Chapter 8. The winter season unexpectedly arrives in Maycomb, catching the town off guard. The winter is unusually cold, and the people of Maycomb are puzzled by this sudden shift in weather, which some believe is linked to a disturbance in the natural order, such as the children misbehaving. Mr. Avery, a neighbor, suggests that the season change is due to children disobeying their parents, smoking, and fighting each other. This idea, though whimsical, leads Scout and Jem to feel guilty for causing the strange weather, and they humorously believe their actions might have influenced the seasons. Amid the cold winter, old Mrs. Radley, Boo's reclusive mother, dies, though her death hardly causes a stir in the neighborhood since she had rarely been seen. Scout and Jem, driven by their curiosity about Boo, wonder if Boo had something to do with her death, but Atticus, their father, dismisses their suspicions and explains that she passed away due to natural causes. The children's curiosity about Boo is further complicated by their father's unwillingness to discuss the Radleys. Jem, sensing that Atticus might be displeased with their interest in Boo, advises Scout not to ask him more questions about the Radley family. However, their fascination with Boo continues to grow, and they wonder what Boo is like and whether he is truly as scary as they imagined. As the weather grows colder, a surprising event occurs. It begins to snow in Maycomb. Neither Scout nor Jem has ever seen snow before, and they react with excitement and disbelief. The rare snowfall leads to a temporary school closure, announced by the local telephone operator, Eula May. The children, eager to make the most of the snow, rush outside, but their excitement is tempered by the fact that the snow is too wet to make a proper snowman. Jem, determined to create a snowman despite the poor conditions, begins to collect snow from Miss Maudie's yard and combines it with dirt to build a snowman. As they work on their creation, Scout comments that the snowman looks like a nigger snowman due to its muddy appearance, but Jem quickly works to improve it. The snowman begins to resemble Mr. Avery, the neighbor who had warned the children about their bad behavior affecting the weather. With the addition of more snow and some items like a stovewood stick and a sun hat from Miss Maudie, the snowman is finished, though it is somewhat of a caricature of Mr. Avery. Atticus, seeing the snowman, praises Jem for his creativity but warns him that it might be considered offensive, so they agree to disguise the snowman by changing its features. Miss Maudie, upon seeing the snowman, laughs and playfully scolds Jem for borrowing her sun hat, but she is secretly impressed by his work. The scene ends with the children feeling a sense of accomplishment, and even Atticus acknowledges their effort, though he finds the snowman's likeness to Mr. Avery a bit too much. Later that night, the temperature drops drastically, and a fire breaks out at Miss Maudie's house. Scout and Jem are woken by Atticus, who quickly gets them dressed and tells them to stay close to the Radley house for safety as they watch the fire. The firemen struggle with the cold and the equipment, and Miss Maudie's house is soon consumed by the flames. The townspeople, including Atticus, are concerned, but there is little that can be done to save the house. Scout and Jem stand by, helpless, as the fire destroys Miss Maudie's home. In the midst of the chaos, Atticus instructs the children to stay away from the fire, and they watch the men work to control the blaze. Jem is frustrated that the firemen are not moving fast enough, but Atticus remains calm and tells them to wait. Eventually, the fire is out, and Miss Maudie's house is lost. However, there is a small moment of grace amidst the disaster. While watching the fire, Boo Radley unexpectedly appears and quietly places a blanket around Scout's shoulders, protecting her from the cold. This mysterious act of kindness marks a turning point for Scout's understanding of Boo, as she realizes that he is not the monster she once imagined. Chapter 8 is filled with significant moments that shape the children's perceptions of the world around them. The strange winter weather, the creation of the snowman, and the fire at Miss Maudie's house serve as metaphors for the changes occurring in Maycomb, particularly the growing tension and uncertainty in the town. At the same time, these events highlight the deepening mystery surrounding Boo Radley, as the children continue to try to understand the enigma of their reclusive neighbor. This chapter emphasizes themes of childhood curiosity, the blurred lines between fantasy and reality, and the complexities of human behavior. Chapter 9. The story takes place around the Christmas holiday, where Scout and her family visit Finch's Landing to spend Christmas with their relatives. Scout, who is growing up fast, is faced with the ongoing tension between her and her cousin Frances. During the Christmas dinner, Scout feels uncomfortable in her family environment. She is made to sit at a separate table with the children, while the adults engage in conversation. Aunt Alexandra, who holds traditional views about what is proper for a young lady, frequently criticizes Scout's tomboyish ways and behavior, suggesting she should learn to be more ladylike. Scout, however, feels that she is being unfairly judged and tries to understand the adults' expectations, which makes her feel even more out of place. As dinner progresses, tensions rise between Scout and her cousin Frances, who teases her about her father, Atticus. Frances uses a derogatory term nigger lover to insult Atticus, referring to his role in defending Tom Robinson, a black man accused of raping a white woman. This deeply offends Scout, who already feels protective of her father and resentful of the way he is being criticized in the town. Unable to control her anger, Scout punches Frances in the face, knocking him down. This outburst leads to a confrontation with Uncle Jack, who has witnessed the incident and scolds Scout for fighting, not understanding the full context behind her actions. Uncle Jack punishes Scout without asking for her side of the story, which leaves her feeling hurt and misunderstood. Scout tries to explain to him that Frances's insult about Atticus was the real reason she reacted violently, but Uncle Jack is somewhat dismissive of her perspective. He doesn't fully grasp the emotional toll that Frances's words took on Scout, and he reprimands her for her behavior rather than sympathizing with the emotional distress she felt. However, Scout is able to explain her feelings to Uncle Jack, who promises to be discreet about the situation and keep it from reaching Atticus. While Jack still scolds Scout for her conduct, the chapter ends on a somewhat lighter note when Scout and Uncle Jack share a moment of understanding as he bandages her bruised knuckles. Scout is left feeling that, while she hasn't fully resolved the issue with her family, she has found a degree of comfort in her interaction with her uncle. Throughout the chapter, we see how the tension surrounding the trial of Tom Robinson is beginning to affect the Finch family. Scout is exposed to the harsh realities of prejudice and judgment, even within her own family. Her father's moral stance, which many in the town view with disdain, sets her apart from her relatives, And this chapter highlights the growing divide between Scout's childhood innocence and the complexities of the adult world. The themes of racial prejudice, family expectations, and the pain of growing up all play a significant role in the development of the narrative. Chapter 10. Scout and Jem reflect on their father, Atticus, and his seemingly unremarkable nature. Atticus, nearing 50, was much older than the other parents in Macomb, and his age made him appear feeble and out of touch with the more active lives of the other fathers. He didn't do the things the other fathers did. He didn't hunt, play poker, or engage in physical activities like working with his hands. His job as a lawyer, working in an office rather than doing manual labor or running a business, only added to his image of being unremarkable in his children's eyes. Atticus's physical limitations also contributed to this image. He wore glasses, and he was nearly blind in his left eye, a condition that he explained was a curse of the Finch family. This made him look somewhat fragile, and he often had to turn his head to use his right eye when trying to focus on something. In contrast to the strong, physically active fathers that Scout and Jem saw in their peers, Atticus seemed to lack the manliness or action-packed life that they expected from a father. Despite his limitations and the way he appeared in the eyes of his children, Atticus had a quiet dignity and intelligence. He didn't engage in childish games or behavior, and he preferred to read books in the quiet of his home rather than participate in social or physical activities. His calm and measured way of living, however, did not remain unnoticed in the small town of Macomb, especially after he took on the controversial case of Tom Robinson, a black man accused of raping a white woman. The news of him defending Robinson spread quickly, and much of the town's gossip about him was far from complimentary. Scout struggles with how to handle this gossip and the insults that are thrown her way as a result. When word spreads that Atticus is representing Robinson, Scout faces teasing and bullying at school, including being called a coward and hearing classmates talk disparagingly about her father. However, Scout takes a firm stand in her own way. She resolves not to fight in public, but is willing to defend her father in private. Her resolve comes from the understanding that the family is sacred ground, and she would fight anyone who spoke ill of Atticus. In addition to his personal qualities, Atticus's approach to parenting also stands out. When he gives Jem and Scout air rifles, he refuses to teach them how to shoot. Instead, it is Uncle Jack who takes on the responsibility of teaching them how to use the rifles. Atticus, however, gives them a moral lesson about shooting birds. He tells them that it's a sin to kill a mockingbird because mockingbirds do no harm to people's crops or property. Instead, they provide beauty through their songs. This lesson about compassion and respect for nature becomes symbolic later in the story and plays a significant role in the book's themes of innocence and justice. Scout, trying to understand her father's peculiarities, turns to Miss Maudie for answers. Miss Maudie, who is a close friend of the family, offers a more positive view of Atticus. She explains that Atticus is actually a man of great capability and skill, even if his talents aren't flashy or conventional. She tells Scout and Jem that Atticus could be a skilled checker player, a feat that amazed those who grew up with him, and that he was known for his abilities in their community. Miss Maudie also points out that Atticus was capable of many things, including playing the Jew's harp, which further underscores how much Scout and Jem still had to learn about their father. However, Scout is still disappointed by the fact that Atticus doesn't take part in the exciting activities she associates with masculinity and fatherhood. She believes that life would be different if Atticus were younger and more active, especially when it comes to activities like playing football, a sport that Jem is passionate about. Jem is disappointed that Atticus is too old to play in the Methodist Church's annual football game. Scout, too, wishes that Atticus were a more active father, someone who could participate in their youthful pursuits. In a more comical moment, Scout and Jem spend a day playing with their air rifles, and their curiosity takes them near the Radley house. Jem notices an old dog, Tim Johnson, stumbling down the street. The dog appears sick, and its strange behavior causes Jem to worry. He and Scout run to Calpurnia for help, thinking the dog may need medical attention. Calpurnia, initially skeptical, realizes the dog is acting like a mad dog, a sign that it might be rabid. Calpurnia, in a flurry of urgency, contacts Atticus and the sheriff, Mr. Hecate, to warn them about the dog. The entire neighborhood becomes alert as Calpurnia runs from house to house, urging the townspeople to stay inside. Meanwhile, Atticus and Mr. Tate arrive at the scene, ready to handle the situation. As they wait for the dog to approach, Scout becomes anxious and confused about what's going to happen. She recalls the expectations she had for her father and how he had never been a man of action in the way other fathers were. When Tim Johnson finally approaches, it becomes clear that the dog is rabid, and Mr. Tate hands a rifle to Atticus, asking him to take the shot. Atticus, who has always avoided violence, is asked to kill the dog. In this tense moment, Atticus's calmness and precision in handling the rifle impress Scout and Jem. They watch in awe as their father takes the shot with skill and ease, hitting the target perfectly. This episode marks a turning point in the children's understanding of Atticus. While he had always been somewhat of an enigma to them, his actions in this moment reveal his hidden capabilities. Atticus, despite his age and his refusal to engage in typical masculine activities, proves that he is not feeble or ineffective. He is, in fact, a man of quiet strength and wisdom, capable of rising to the occasion when necessary. This event also illustrates that, while Atticus may not fit the conventional mold of a heroic father figure, he is still a deeply admirable man with principles and skills that his children had yet to fully appreciate. Thank you for listening and joining us. If you enjoyed this audiobook summary, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more summaries that inspire and expand your mind. Drop a comment below to share which book you'd like us to summarize next. We'd love to hear your suggestions. We look forward to bringing you more valuable insights here on Audiobooks Alchemy. Until next time, keep learning and growing.